Have you ever wondered what will happen when millions of Americans start withdrawing their retirement savings? Right at the same time, the global economy is shaken by war, inflation, and political instability. In 2025, we're seeing energy prices soar due to conflicts in the Middle East, international trade squeezed by tariffs, and U.S. economic growth stuck at around 1%. Against this backdrop, the stock market looks like a ticking time bomb. Robert Kiyosaki warned about this more than 20 years ago in Rich Dad's Prophecy. A financial crisis is inevitable, and it will wipe out the wealth of those who depend solely on retirement funds and on the belief that things will always stay the same. But this isn't just a scary story. The book also points out that if you know how to prepare, a crisis doesn't mark the end. It can actually be the greatest opportunity of your life to build true financial freedom. So, how can you avoid becoming a victim of history and instead turn it to your advantage? Stick around until the end of this video, because I'll break down the core message of Rich Dad's Prophecy and connect it directly to what's happening in America today. And if you find this topic helpful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Part 1. The Warning: Baby Boomers and the Retirement Time Bomb. Back in 2002, when Robert Kiyosaki published Rich Dad's Prophecy, many people laughed at him. They said the US market is too strong to collapse, and the retirement system is built to be safe. But Robert saw further ahead. He spotted something most people at the time ignored. An entire generation of baby boomers, those born after World War II, would eventually retire all at once. And when they started pulling money out, the market would shake at its core. Picture this: a stadium filled with 70 million people, all of them baby boomers. For decades, they've been pouring money into 401ks, IRAs, and pension funds, as if tossing coin after coin into a massive jar. The stock market swelled because money kept flowing in. But then, one day, the crowd stops throwing coins. Instead, they start taking them out, handful after handful, to pay for medicine, hospital bills, and the final years of life. The jar is still full, but the flow has reversed. This is the moment Robert called the retirement time bomb, a bomb that doesn't explode in a single blast, but bleeds the market slowly, bit by bit. And here in 2025, we're living that reality. The younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, should be the ones buying in. But many are buried in student debt, renting instead of owning, and instead of pouring money into 401ks, they're chasing crypto, startups, or the gig economy in hopes of striking it rich faster. Take a real example. John, 67, from Florida. All his life, he believed his 401k would take care of retirement. But then, in 2022-2023, inflation spiked, markets shook, and his portfolio lost 20%. His savings weren't enough to cover healthcare and living costs, so he was forced to sell more stocks right as prices were dropping. And that's the vicious cycle Robert warned about, withdrawing in a crisis, which only makes the crisis worse. Look at the bigger picture, and John's story isn't unique. Massive pension funds like CalPERS are also being forced to sell assets just to meet withdrawal demands. It's a quiet domino effect, one piece falling after another, but powerful enough to rattle the entire system. And that's why Robert emphasized, if you still believe that all it takes is working hard, contributing to your 401k, and waiting until retirement for things to be fine, then you're sitting on a ticking time bomb, one the previous generation unknowingly set in motion. Part 2. The difference between Rich Dad and Poor Dad. When Robert Kiyosaki wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he wasn't just telling a personal story. He was laying out two opposite mindsets: the poor dad who believed in safety within the system, and the rich dad who understood how to use the system as leverage for himself. In Rich Dad's Prophecy, this contrast becomes even sharper because it connects directly to the reality facing the baby boomer generation. Picture the poor dad. He works hard his whole life, convinced that a steady job, a pension, and a 401k will secure his future. He places blind faith in the government and big corporations, much like the American middle class, who believe there's no way this can collapse. America is too big to fail. But when the retirement time bomb starts ticking, he discovers that safety was only an illusion. The rich dad, on the other hand, sees things differently. He doesn't treat the 401k as his only lifeline. Instead, he uses it as just one tool, but never depends on it. He builds cash flow from real estate, businesses, and tangible assets, things that can generate income even when the stock market is in chaos. For him, real security comes from financial knowledge and control, not promises from the government or pension funds. We can see this difference clearly today. Those with the poor dad mindset put nearly all their faith in retirement accounts. When inflation surges and the costs of medicine and living skyrocket, they find themselves cornered. Meanwhile, those with the rich dad mindset diversified early: rental properties, dividends from small businesses, even online income or digital assets. They don't have to dump stocks at rock-bottom prices because they already have other streams of cash flow. Robert never dismissed hard work, but he reminded us working hard inside a broken system only means you'll burn out before it collapses. And looking at America today, this truth is clearer than ever. With wars, supply chain crises, and global instability, the poor dad is scrambling for a promise of safety, while the rich dad has long built multiple layers of defense. The takeaway? In this era, safety doesn't come from promises. It comes from the mindset you choose. Will you be the poor dad who hands everything over to the system, or the rich dad who learns to take the wheel of your own financial ship?
Part 3. The mistake of dependence. One of the strongest warnings in Rich Dad's prophecy is about overdependence. Robert Kiyosaki explained that most Americans put all their trust into a single basket, the 401k or employer-managed pension plan. For them, it's simple. Contribute regularly, wait until retirement, and you're set. But here's the problem. When a system relies on millions of people all waiting to withdraw money at the same time, sooner or later it collapses under its own weight. Imagine a crowded concert hall. Everyone sits calmly, trusting that when the show ends, they'll file out in an orderly fashion. But the moment someone yells "fire," the entire crowd rushes for the exit. At that point, no one escapes safely, no matter if you bought a VIP ticket or sat in the front row. That's exactly how 401ks and pension funds work. When tens of millions of baby boomers hit retirement and start pulling money out, the pressure crashes down on the stock market. Stocks are forced into fire sales, retirement funds shrink, and the next generation is left holding an empty bag. We've seen it before. During the 2008 financial crisis, millions of near retirees lost over half the value of their retirement accounts in just a few months. Many were forced to work into their 60s and 70s just to pay for medicine and utility bills. That's the price of total dependence on a system you don't control. Robert called this the illusion of safety. When you think you're walking on a paved, secure road, but in reality, you're crossing a rotting wooden bridge ready to snap at any moment. And in 2025, this risk is even clearer. Wars in multiple regions, inflation not fully under control, U.S. national debt at record highs. Stack these factors together, and a single shock could send markets spiraling. Those who depend entirely on their 401k will be the first to pay the price. The lesson here isn't to abandon retirement accounts, it's this: never rely on them alone. Build additional cash flow from real estate. Develop side income through small businesses or digital products. Create assets that generate profit outside the stock market. As Robert stressed, financial freedom doesn't come from dependence, it comes from taking control. And that's the difference between someone who uses financial tools wisely and someone trapped inside an invisible cage built by those very tools. Part 4. Building cash flow assets. Robert Kiyosaki once said, "The rich don't work for money, they have money work for them." It sounds familiar, but to truly understand it, you need to look at the idea of cash flow, a steady, recurring stream of income that continues whether you're working or asleep. In Rich Dad's prophecy, Robert emphasized that if you rely only on paper assets, like rising stock prices or retirement funds, sooner or later you'll be forced to sell them just to cover expenses. And when millions of people do the same, the system ends up eating itself. That's why he focused so heavily on assets that generate cash flow. Imagine two people buying houses. The first buys one to live in, calling it an asset, but every month he has to pay the mortgage, taxes, and maintenance. The house drains money instead of producing it. The second buys a rental property. Every month, the rent pays off the mortgage and still leaves some extra. That house not only holds value, but also creates repeated income, just like the classic example of the goose that lays golden eggs. This is how Robert drew the line between being rich on paper and being truly wealthy. Real wealth means continuous cash flow, whether from real estate, businesses, royalties, or other income-producing investments. Take McDonald's as an example. Most people think they're just in the fast food business. In reality, McDonald's is one of the biggest real estate companies in the world. They own land at tens of thousands of prime locations globally, and that rental cash flow is the real financial backbone, not the burgers. Or look at Jeff Bezos when he built Amazon. He didn't just create an online store, he built a massive cash flow engine from retail to cloud computing. When you have multiple golden eggs like that, even an economic storm can't wipe you out. For everyday Americans, this message doesn't mean you need to rush out and buy property or build a billion-dollar company. It could be as simple as investing in REITs to collect dividends, starting a YouTube channel or podcast that earns steady ad revenue, or writing an ebook to sell on Amazon. The key isn't the scale, it's the repetition and sustainability of the cash flow. Robert warned that in times of upheaval, assets only matter if they can feed you day after day. Stocks can swing wildly, portfolio values can evaporate in a week, but even a small cash flow asset keeps delivering steadily. So while baby boomers may be worried about retirement, younger generations can take a different lesson. Start building cash flow assets today instead of waiting until the market forces you to liquidate just to survive.
Part 5. Crisis is not the enemy, it's the opportunity. Robert Kiyosaki thinks very differently from the crowd. He sees crisis as opportunity, not disaster. The reason is simple. Throughout history, many of the greatest fortunes were built during times of chaos. In Rich Dad's Prophecy, he explained that when those who depend on pensions and stocks are forced to sell, the market will crash hard. For most people, that's a tragedy. But for those who have steady cash flow and cash reserves, it's the chance to buy assets at fire sale prices. American financial history proves this point. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, most people were wiped out, but a few investors with cash on hand bought land, stocks, and businesses at dirt-cheap prices. When the economy recovered, their wealth multiplied many times over. In 2008, the crisis, millions of American families lost their homes as foreclosures swept the country. Real estate prices collapsed. But at the very same time, those with vision were buying properties in places like Las Vegas and Florida for half or even a third of their former value. Today, many of them are millionaires. Robert called this the fundamental difference. The poor see risk, the rich see opportunity. The poor sell in panic, the rich quietly accumulate. Just look at Warren Buffett. When Wall Street trembled in 2008, he famously said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful." With that mindset, he poured money into major companies at once-in-a-lifetime prices and reaped massive profits after the recovery. Robert's message is crystal clear. Crisis doesn't kill you, it only reveals how well you've prepared. If all you have are paper assets, a crisis will strip you bare. But if you've built cash flow, practiced financial discipline, and kept reserves ready, a crisis becomes the moment you buy the goose cheap and let it lay golden eggs for years to come. And in 2025, with interest rates swinging, global instability, and financial markets riding a roller coaster, the real question isn't, will a crisis happen, but rather, will you be the panicked victim or the one who seizes the chance to change your life? Part 6. Responsibility lies with you. Robert Kiyosaki ends Rich Dad's Prophecy with a hard truth that many people struggle to accept. No one is coming to save you, except you. He stresses that the poor dads of society, governments, corporations, and pension systems often promise they'll take care of you. But history shows those promises rarely hold up. And when crisis hits, the first ones sacrificed are always ordinary people. Think of the baby boomer generation. They spent their lives trusting pensions, safe stocks, and Social Security. But by 2008, millions who were nearing retirement had to go back to work at Walmart or Home Depot just to pay for medicine and rent. Their mistake wasn't trusting, it was surrendering all financial responsibility to someone else. Robert reminds us again and again, Rich Dad taught him that financial freedom is a personal responsibility, not a social entitlement. That means you can't count on the government to bail you out. You can't expect your company to honor its pension promises forever. You just can't wait for the market to magically recover. The only thing you can do is learn, practice, and take action to protect your own future. A clear example came after the 2020 pandemic. Millions of Americans lost their jobs, their health insurance, and were left with only a few $1,000s in savings. Meanwhile, others, those who had taken the time to build rental income, invest in dividend-paying stocks, or create online businesses, stood firm and even thrived. The difference wasn't luck, it was responsibility. Robert once wrote, "When you hand over your financial destiny to someone else, you've chosen the path of poverty." On the other hand, when you take responsibility, even when it's hard, even when it's full of challenges, you're stepping through the only door that leads to real freedom. And that is the final message of Rich Dad's Prophecy. A crisis may wipe out the economy, but it cannot take away your power of choice, unless you give it up yourself. In the end, Rich Dad's Prophecy isn't meant to scare you, it's a wake-up call to take action. Crisis will come, but whether you become a victim or the one who seizes the opportunity, the choice is yours. If you want real financial freedom, start today. Learn, invest, and build cash flow for yourself. And to make sure you don't miss more life-changing lessons from the best finance books, hit like, subscribe, and come back for the next videos.